And once that's done, guys, that is what it ends up looking like. So you can see now, we've got a perfect little bead all the way across. This one here is a 5mm bead, so it's looking pretty good, especially when it comes to that corner. What's going on, guys? I'm Bill and welcome to Bill's How To. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to apply silicone or caulking to get a perfect finish every single time. What we're going to be looking at is three main methods. Number one is using your finger with some soapy water. Now this one here is a little bit controversial. A lot of people don't like to use it for a variety of reasons. Personally, I've been using it for probably about the past 10 years for the vast majority of applications with no problems. The second method we're going to be looking at is taping off the area, applying the silicone and then removing our tape. And the third one, which is the most these days commonly referred to method, is using a profiling or tooling kit like this one here. So we've got our Fugi kit here ready to go. We're going to be testing out all three methods, checking out the pros and the cons of all three. That way you guys can make up your mind as to which method you prefer for your next project. Let's get straight into it, guys. Let's do this. So let's start off with the first method of using your finger with some soapy water. What I mean by soapy water is all you want to do is mix some water with a little bit of dishwashing detergent. That's going to allow you to have a bit of a lubricant that's going to allow you to profile the area or the silicone or the caulking without having it sticking to your finger. The main issues that we find here is, number one, when somebody applies the silicone, you have to first make sure that it's actually got full contact on the area before you apply the soapy water. If you don't apply full contact onto the area that's going to be sealed, then obviously it won't be watertight, because we're going to be spraying a soapy water underneath that gap and it won't allow the silicone to stick to it. So all you need to make sure basically is to make sure that you've got a full seal of silicone on the surface. And I'll show you guys in a second what I mean by that. The second thing is, a lot of people like to bring up the issue of bacteria on your fingers. To be 100% honest, there's bacteria on everything. So unless you're going to be going through with alcohol swabs or some sort of cleaning agent on every tool and surface that you're going to be working on, you're going to have the exact same apparent result anyway. But what we're using here is, anytime you're sealing off a kitchen and a bathroom, which is the most common time people are using silicone, all you need to do is basically get one that's of decent quality. So a decent quality silicone will have either a sanitary grade, okay, so that means that it's suitable for kitchens. What we're also looking at is on the back here, it says that there we go. So it contains agents to resist the growth of mold and fungus. This is an agent that's built into the product that prevents or reduces the amount of mold or fungus or anything else that's going to be growing on the surface. So regardless of which silicone brand you use, if you don't maintain the area, you don't clean it up regularly, you're going to run into this problem regardless. So what you need to do is make sure that you keep the area clean on a regular basis, especially if it's in a shower, to prevent mold from growing. But there is an agent in this one here, and you can pretty much smell it once you apply it. It smells like vinegar. So it honestly wouldn't surprise me if there's vinegar inside this product, and that's what's preventing the mold from occurring. So just make sure that you get a good quality silicone. And honestly, I've had no issues over the past 10 years. I've been using my finger with some soapy water for the vast majority of applications. There are some times where I do prefer to use some sort of profiling tool, or at least something with a flat edge, just to prevent any kind of concave area or pushing the product into a specific joint and causing that to recess. So vast majority of times you can use your finger. If you're using a clear silicone, so we've got here the most common colors are either clear or white. Okay, so if you're using a clear one, cosmetically, aesthetically, you don't really have to worry about the finish, because as long as it's got a nice tight seal, it's clear at the end of the day. You're not going to see any kind of imperfections or anything like that in the product. So I'll show you guys quickly with a clear silicone, and I'll show you just how easy it is to do with your finger. So we're going to start off by cutting our nozzle. Now, when it comes to cutting the nozzle, once again, people like to have a lot of differing opinions regarding cutting it straight, cutting it on a specific size, or cutting it on an angle. Honestly, I personally think it's personal preference at the end of the day. I always cut mine on a 45-degree angle. I find it's a lot easier to get into the corner, leave a reasonably a perfect finish, even just by applying it with the nozzle itself and no tooling required at the end. So Vast majority of times I'll cut it on an angle. Now people like to also throw the argument that if you cut it on a straight line, that you'll be able to push that product into the joint. Now remembering what we're doing here is we're not only sealing off the area, but we're also filling in a gap. Okay, so what we're doing is filling in a gap and sealing it. We don't necessarily need it to go into the gap or push the product that far into the gap. Obviously it's going to allow us to anchor the product a bit better into the joint, but at the end of the day, silicone is designed to stick to the surface. So most of your adhesion is going to be on the outsides of the surface and not necessarily in the joint. Especially here we've got a very, very small joint. To push the product into that joint is very difficult to do. So at the end of the day, if we apply it using a straight cut or an angle cut, we're going to be able to push that product in as far as possible, whether you're using your finger or a profiling tool. So basically take it, cut it on a 45-degree angle, and now we're ready to go. So that's basically all we need, guys. Just a little cut like this one here, and we're ready to get started. So we're going to start off on our clear silicone. Remove our little cap here. And I'll try getting a little bit closer so that you guys can see what's going on. So just make sure you've got a nice clean surface before you get started. We're going to take our caulking gun or our silicone gun. Okay, we're going to apply a bead, nice consistent all the way through this joint here. Now we've also got a corner up there. I'm not going to show you the corner just yet. I'll leave that for our main testing with the colored silicone so that you can actually see any flaws or anything that, any imperfections in the actual finish itself. So for a clear one, like I said, we'll just apply our bead of silicone. And I'll show you guys what this looks like now. So if you have a close look at the bead of silicone that I've just applied, we've got full contact on both surfaces. That is all you need to worry about. If you've got any little gaps underneath that and you apply the soapy water, that's where you're probably going to run into some issues because it won't allow the silicone to stick to that particular area where there is a gap underneath. So all you need to make sure of is that we've got full contact on both areas. Then we can take our soapy water, spray just a little bit to the area, also on your fingers, and then you can go straight over that joint, and you can see that we've got just a little bit of excess on my finger. Now we can take a paper towel, wipe that one there off. So when we have a look at the finished product, you can see there we've got a perfect bead all the way across, and because it's clear, you can't see any imperfections in the silicone bead itself. Now there is a little bit of water beading on top, that's from the soapy water. All you have to do is just let that dry on its own. Don't try and dry it off with a paper towel or anything like that because you will damage the finish on the silicone. And once that's dry, it'll be a perfect finish. Remembering this one here is a clear silicone, so any imperfections won't show. So using clear silicone with your finger, absolutely no problem in doing so. We're going to now switch this one here over to a white silicone, and we're going to see if we get a perfect finish once again with no imperfections. So to remove the old silicone, one of the benefits of the actual Fugi kit is this little 90-degree section right here. What we're able to do is squeeze that into the joint and we can remove any of that material in case you make a mistake or you want it to start again. Before it sets, you can just simply put that into the corner, push it all the way across, and we can remove all that silicone nice and easy, and we're left with a nice clean surface ready to get started for our next application. So this time around we're using a colored white silicone. Same thing, we've got our little 45-degree cut here on the nozzle. Okay, what we're going to keep in mind once again is make sure that you've got full contact on the area in order to use the soapy water. So I'm going to go all the way up this corner here as well, just a little bit so that I can show you guys the type of finish you can expect when using your finger, soapy water and clear silicone. Most people don't like to show you the corners and grout lines because they are a little bit more difficult. We'll start off in this back corner here, just so I can stay out of the view of the camera. And then we'll go up here as well. And I'll show you guys what that looks like. So now we've applied the white silicone, you can see we've got full contact all the way around. Once again, that is the biggest thing to be careful of here. Just making sure you've got full contact on that whole joint, both sides, and now we can get started on our soapy water. So we're going to do the exact same thing. Take our soapy water, give that a light spray over the area, a little bit on my fingers as well, just to stop it from sticking to my finger. And it doesn't really matter where you start, because what we're going to do in the end as well is we're going to go right over the whole lot. So I'm going to start off here in this corner, finger in, go all the way up. I can switch over and use another finger for now. I'll clean this section here off, spray my fingers just a little bit more once again, and then we'll get this last section right here. So if we have a look at the finished result now, I just poked this little corner here by accident, but we're going to be able to fix that up in a second. So if you have a look, we do have a pretty nice finish. To be 100% honest, we've got about a 95% perfect finish all the way through. Even when we come to the corner, I have poked it just a little bit down that bottom section, but this one here would have been a perfect finish as well. What we can do at this point, if you're still not happy with it, you can honestly go back over it using a little bit of soapy water once again until you're 100% happy. If you find that you've got some areas that are a little bit wider than others, you can apply just a little bit more pressure and push that into the joint. So once again, give that a little spray. That's the benefit of using soapy water, guys. You can always go back over the area if you're not happy with it. Spray my fingers again. So go back around. We'll sweep over this corner, that little section that I poked it before by accident. Go back up the top. And you can just continuously work that until you're 100% happy with the finish. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to remove this section, we'll apply some tape, and I'll show you guys the difference when using tape. Now when it comes to using tape, to be 100% honest, I absolutely never ever use the taping method. Number one, it's expensive. You're going to be spending a lot of money on tape, especially because you want to use a good quality tape. Make sure you don't damage any of the surface. And second of all, it's very time consuming. So you are going to have to go running all the way around these joints, applying the tape everywhere that you want to apply the silicone or the caulking. And you still need to make sure that you've got a relatively straight line. So I'm going to go through now and tape off this whole area so I can show you guys what it ends up looking like. But to be 100% honest, I personally never opt to use this method here. So we're going to run this side here down, try and get it as straight as possible. And you can see there we're already running into problems of getting it pretty straight. One side's a little bit wider than the other. And this is the problem that you'll have when using tape. So you want to make sure that you've got it pressed in all the way through. And I'm really not happy with that as it is. So I'll show you guys what it's looking like. So I've only just started applying the tape, remembering wherever the tape is going to end, once we remove that, that's going to be our finished product. So you can see here, it's a little bit wider down this side, becomes a little bit narrow here, comes out a bit wider again, narrow, wide. So I'm going to remove this section here. I'm honestly not happy with it. I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to keep working at this until I get my finish as neat as possible so that we have the best possible comparison once we're done. So I'm just going to quickly mark up all of this area here, tape it all off, and I'll see you guys in a bit. Alright guys, so I've finally got this little section here as perfect as I possibly can. It probably took me honestly about 3-4 minutes to get this one here as perfect as possible, and you can see there we've got a pretty nice finish. Honestly, I'm pretty happy with the way this one here turned out. But if you imagine you had to do a large area, plenty of corners, plenty of joints, long runs, this is honestly very, very, very time consuming. I've never ever actually attempted this method here simply for that reason. It's very, very time consuming. It's not worth the effort as far as I can tell now. So what we're going to do is apply the white silicone, and then we're going to peel off the tape and see what kind of finish we can achieve. Now let's get started on applying this silicone first, because once I apply the silicone, I already know what's going to happen. If I try and profile that with my finger without using any soapy water, we're not going to be able to spread that as nicely as possible. I'll quickly try it on one side and then I might have to revert back to using the soapy water method. So let's just quickly see how this one here goes. All right, so I'm going to try my absolute best to stay out of the camera's way. We'll apply these ones here. I'll start off on the top way, or the top joint. Now remembering with this method here, you don't have to be precise, and the reason for that is because we've got the tape. So we can run that all the way up, making sure we've completely filled in that area. You can even overfill it. Go back this way here. A lot of people, when they do try this method online, it never looks pretty at all. Especially when they're during the application section of it. All right, so now we've got this section here. I'll show you guys a bit of a close-up. It's not looking pretty whatsoever. So you can see there all the way through, the bead is completely filled. Now, if we don't use any soapy water, this is what's going to happen. So I'm going to start off here in this corner. And you can see it's completely spreading out. We've got all this gunk on my finger. And when I try and remove it, it's just sticking everywhere. Everything wants to stick. All right, I think I'm gonna have to stop and use the soapy water. This is definitely not the way that it should be done. This is just one little strip here that I just started, and look at the mess already on my hands. So I'm gonna quickly clean my hands off as much as I can. Get the soapy water. This is honestly the best trick out there. So many people really don't, take advantage of this method. It's not until you actually try it, instead of simply watching somebody online doing it, that you realize just how well this method here works. So we've got some soapy water on there. I'll quickly spray my fingers. Go back to this corner, and that is so much better. So we'll take that little blob there off. Once again, spray a little bit more on my fingers. Go back up. Out to the side. Everything's looking pretty nice at the moment. It's all pushed into the edge of that tape. So now before this dries, you have to actually remove this pretty quick. So this has probably been sitting here for now, I don't know, maybe about a minute or so. So we're going to start removing all the tape, and we'll see what kind of finish. So I'll start off with this bottom section here. So that surprisingly doesn't look too bad at the moment. Let's have a closer look. It's not looking too bad. We've got full contact, but if you have a very close look, and this is my biggest issue with using the tape method. So if we have a look at that edge right there down at the bottom, have a look at that bottom surface, you can see the lip is actually raised a bit. Now this is what is going to cause mold. What happens there is little bits of bacteria or fungus or any kind of mess that you've got here from your kitchen. Whenever you try and clean up the kitchen bench, this is all going to go straight underneath that little area there, including water. That's just going to sit under that lip, and that's where all your little mess and mold and everything else is going to grow from. So this method here, honestly, even though I've seen it so many times online, I would definitely not recommend it, or not leaving it at this point anyway. You can see on top, we've also got the same problem where the tape has been removed. See if you guys can see that. So this is what happens as you remove the tape. It removes that little lip. Let's have a look at the corner. Even the corner's not looking too good at the moment. So what I would do at this point, if you did want to use the tape and you weren't 100% sold or confident on doing it using your finger, what I would do at this point, honestly, is go back to the soapy water. And this is where it comes back to everything reverting back to the soapy water trick. So we're going to spray this section here, light spray. Now that we've got the bulk of it all removed, a little bit on my hands. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over the top of this and try and fix any of those little imperfections. Even though it might look good aesthetically, it's not going to adhere as well. And the reason for that is we've already ripped it up with the tape, created a little lip, we sprayed the soapy water, that's gone underneath it. And then even though it looks good now, so you can see that little section where the lip was, looks pretty good now, no more raised lip anywhere. However, the adhesion isn't going to be the greatest. We're not going to give this silicone the best chance or the best survival chance, or see how long it's going to last. But at the moment, even though it looks good, this isn't the best way to do it, guys. So far, I think I'd revert to the old school finger method, or paddle pop stick if you like using a paddle pop stick. Let's try out this Fugi tool and see just how much difference there is. So now it's time to try out this Fugi kit. What we've got here is the 7-piece kit that I picked up off Amazon for about $45. There are smaller kits if you don't want to spend that much, and there are also different brands. So they range anywhere from about $5 all the way up to what I paid, which was $45. But let's try this one here out and see what it can do. Now, there are a whole range of different attachments and tooling kits or tooling items in here that I'm not going to get into in this video here. What we're going to be focusing on is pretty much this main one right here. Now, the reason for that is there are a lot of other attachments that are used for different applications. If you guys want to check that out, I'll put it in a different video and I'll do a full review with a whole range of different applications that we can use this one here. But the main one we're going to be looking at is this one right here. So the one that I've been using to remove the excess silicone previously, which is this little 90°. And if you notice on the corners here, they've got little numbers. So we've got 16, 10, I think they range anywhere from 5 to about 16 from memory. So we've got a 5 mil here as well. What that is basically the size of the bead. So if we put this one here up against the corner, you can see there the size of the bead that we're going to create. Now, the only time you'd really want to go really thick with a thick bead of silicone is if you've got a really large gap here in the corner, or if you've got damaged areas. So here we've got a stone bench top and splashback. If this one here was all jagged and chipped on the edge, you could then make this one here a little bit wider. So if we needed to make it a bit wider, we can cover all those imperfections and have a nice clean bead. Now, when it comes to the corner, which a lot of people don't like to discuss, with the corner, using these tools here, so if we wanted to use the 10 mil, okay, as you come around to this corner here, it's actually very, very tight, and you're gonna have a really strange looking corner bead right there. So the way to avoid this one here is, what I'd prefer to do is, I'm gonna basically find a little pivot point. So anywhere that I can swing this around, hopefully you guys can see there, swing that around from the corner to get a nice little sweeping action there, and hopefully we'll be able to continue this all the way through. I've seen a few other people that also state that you can do the vertical separate to the horizontal or vice versa. So basically you're gonna fill in this bottom one, let it set, come back after a day or two, and then do the vertical. You can also do that in the opposite method or the opposite process. But the problem with that is that most of these jobs are pretty much something that you want to get out of the way in one go. It's not really profitable or feasible to come back after a few days just to do a vertical line, unless it's your own house and you're doing it over a couple of days, or you've got a large project that you can split this into 2 separate sections. I don't really see the benefit of doing that. So I'm trying to find a way, which I'm going to be playing around with all these kits over the next week or so, all these little individual bits, so that we can find out the best way. But the best thing that I can think of right now is pretty much what I've shown you guys. So we're going to give it a little sweeping action here in this corner to try and make sure that we have a nice consistent bead all the way around. And then I'm going to lightly come up on the vertical side here. So let's put it to the test and see just how well this one here works. But like I said, if you guys want to check out a separate video, or you want me to do a separate video on this whole entire kit and show you what it can really do in a whole different range of applications, let me know in the comment section below. Let's get started, guys, and we'll test this one here out. So quickly, something to keep in mind before you get started is you want to also make sure that your nozzle has been cut at the size roughly of the bead that you're going to be creating. Remembering that there's sizing here on the edge of the profiling tool. So here we're going to be using the 5mm in this case. So what we need to do is just make sure that our nozzle has been cut slightly larger than the nozzle size, than the profiling size itself. So a little bit larger is okay, but smaller, you won't be able to pick up enough material and leave a nice perfect profile. So just make sure you've got enough material in there. What we're going to be doing is just simply applying this silicone straight on. It doesn't matter which side you go, the vertical or the horizontals first. I'll try and stay out of the camera's view as much as possible. Just want to make sure that we've got enough of a bead on there so that our profiling tool can do its job. Back down this way. And we'll stop it right here. All the way across once again. Now the benefit of using this profiling tool is you can see here my bead isn't very consistent. We've got a little lumpy section here, a little bit smaller there. As long as it's generally bigger than the profiling tool, we're going to be able to contour this and get it nicely profiled all the way through. Because this profiling tool actually scrapes off all the excess material as well as profiling it. So remembering our pivot point here in the corner, we're going to make sure that we've got enough room to be able to swing that around and keep a nice steady bead. So you can start from the middle out or from the out into the middle, which meaning the corner here. So we'll start off on this side here, scrape it all the way through, and you can see that's the excess there. I'll let this one here sit on the side and I'll show you guys what we're looking at. Very nice consistent bead all the way across, and that is the edge of it right there. So I'll clean this one here off and I'll get started. We're right close to the pivot point now. Once again, continue all the way around. Once we get to that corner, we're going to back off just a little bit, pivot it all the way around, and then work it all the way through. Now what that's done, you can see that there's a little bit more excess that I have to take off, but right in that corner, which is the most important part, we've got a nice perfect round little section there on the corner. So now we don't have any little jagged sections in that corner. We've got a nice perfect bead. So I'll quickly go over this section right here and I'll clean this one here off, and then we'll get started on our vertical. So once again, back over this side here, we'll go all the way from the start again. Clean that one there off. Little pivot point right there. We're going to back off slightly, swing it around, and remove that one there. And that's all that little excess that we had to remove. And now you can see we've got a little perfect corner right there. So once again, clean off the profiling tool, make sure it's nice and clean, and then we're going to go up on this vertical section. So when we come into this corner here, you want to just make sure that you don't push it all the way in. You're going to damage that little corner that we've just created, and it's looking pretty nice. So what we want to do, push it in just slightly, and then work it all the way up. So you can see there's still a bit of excess on the side that I didn't pick up, a little bit shaky with one hand, holding the camera at the same time. So we'll start off down this bottom section again, pick up that excess, might have to give it one more swipe over that top just to clean up that right side. And once that's done, we've got a nice little perfect bead all the way down. We're just going to clean up this corner section down here. You can see where it's just a little bit wider down that bottom section. We'll just quickly clean that up. So I'll just get a bit tighter on that little pivot point once again. Bring it in a bit closer. Back around. Remove that little bit of excess. And from there we can go straight back up, remembering not to go in too deep. We don't want to damage the little perfect bead that we've just created. And once that's done, guys, that is what it ends up looking like. So you can see now we've got a perfect little bead all the way across. This one here is a 5mm bead, so it's looking pretty good, especially when it comes to that corner. That is probably the easiest way to get around it, just being very careful. Keep a little pivot point before you get to the corner, and then when you come up to the top, You don't want to dig it all the way in, otherwise you're going to damage that nice little corner that you've created and work your way all the way back up. All in all, this tool works pretty good. It's just going to take a little bit of time to get used to it, figure out little tricks and ins and outs in order to get a perfect little finish, just like I showed you guys on that corner. Now we've got a little trick to get a nice perfect corner every single time. So there you have it, guys. That's 3 different methods of applying silicone. As you guys have seen in the video, the tape option is expensive, time consuming, doesn't leave a very nice finish, and at the same time, as I remove the tape, it starts to remove the lip on the silicone. That's definitely not what you want. You need full adhesion, you need a perfect seal every single time, and unfortunately, you can't really get it using tape. So I wouldn't recommend that. The soapy water with your finger or a paddle pop stick or any other little method like that, I honestly don't see any issues with it, as long as you make sure that you've got enough seal or sealant on the area that you're going to be sealing off and the soapy water is not going to get underneath. Generally speaking, I've never had any issues using my fingers, whether it's salt or bacteria or anything else that people like to claim. I've been doing this for a long time and I've never had any issues whatsoever. I go back to the same properties years and years later and the silicone is holding up fine and there's no mold or anything like that that people like to claim. So for me, personal experience, awesome little way to get around it, cheap, doesn't really cost you anything, and you're only using your finger. So most people have got fingers, hopefully. If not, well, actually, you're going to need your fingers for the Fugi too. But regardless, Fugi actually works pretty good. I'm not sure if other brands out there are as good as the Fugi. This one here feels nice, solid, rigid. It's pretty good, to be honest. I'm pretty happy with the way that the results turned out, but there are going to be little tips and tricks that I'm going to have to learn along the way. So that's going to take a bit of practice over the next couple of projects or so, trialing it out and seeing what works, what doesn't, and finding different ways to do it. So if you guys want to see videos on that, let me know in the comment section below, guys. I'll put a link in the bottom if you're interested in purchasing these. But like I said, I do need to practice more in order to find out all the ins and outs. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed the video and you've got a bit more of an idea on how to apply silicone. As always, like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, I'm Bill. Thanks for watching. Bill's out too.